Rock Hudson, died painfully after his gay secret was exposed. He was born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. on May 17, 1925, in Winnetka, Illinois. His childhood was marked by difficulty. His parents divorced when he was young, and his relationship with his stepfather, Wallace Fitzgerald, was reportedly strained. These early years weren't filled with privilege or the nurturing environment often associated with future stars. He was described as shy, reserved, perhaps even introverted, a stark contrast to the confident, outgoing image he would later embody. After graduating from high school, he served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Following his service, he drifted through various jobs, a truck driver, a postman, none of which hinted at a future in the dazzling world of cinema. He harbored dreams of acting, but lacked connections, training, and perhaps even the initial confidence to pursue them aggressively. He was just a tall, good-looking young man with an idea, living a quiet life far removed from the glamour of Hollywood. This period underscores the raw material from which the legend was later built. A young man who needed shaping, refining, and perhaps reinvention. Roy Scherer's transformation into Rock Hudson began when he caught the eye of Henry Wilson, a powerful and controversial Hollywood talent agent known for discovering and promoting handsome young men, often giving them catchy, rugged-sounding names. Wilson saw potential in the physically striking young man, but recognized the need for significant work. Wilson essentially took on the role of sculptor, molding Roy Scherer into the ideal leading man for the era. The name itself was a creation, Rock, reportedly from the Rock River in Illinois, and Hudson, from the Hudson River in New York. It sounded solid, strong, American, but the transformation went deeper. Roy's voice was relatively high-pitched, so he received vocal coaching to lower his register, and he took acting classes, movement classes, anything to smooth out the rough edges and build the skills needed for the screen. His early attempts were famously challenging. In his first film role, Fighter Squadron, 1948, it reportedly took him 38 takes to successfully deliver a single line of dialogue. This incident, while often told as a humorous anecdote, highlights just how raw his talent was and how much deliberate effort went into creating the polished performer. He wasn't a natural prodigy. He was a project. Despite the initial difficulties, Wilson's connections and Rock's undeniable physical appeal secured him a contract with Universal International. He started with small roles, often in B-movies, learning the craft on set. These years were a grind, proving himself, overcoming his initial awkwardness, and slowly building experience. He was one of many aspiring actors, but under Wilson's guidance and with the studio system backing him, he was being groomed for something bigger. The journey from a shy truck driver to a studio player was underway, marked by demanding training and the constant pressure to fit the mold being designed for him. The meticulous crafting paid off. Rock Hudson's career took a significant turn in the mid-1950s, working with acclaimed director Douglas Sirk, a master of Hollywood melodramas. Hudson starred in films like Magnificent Obsession, 1954, and All That Heaven Allows, 1955. These roles showcased his potential as a dramatic actor and, more importantly for his burgeoning image, solidified his status as a romantic leading man. He was charming, earnest, and devastatingly handsome in these roles, capturing the hearts of female audiences. His star power soared. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in the epic drama Giant, 1956, alongside Elizabeth Taylor and James Dean. This nomination cemented his credibility as a serious actor, proving he was more than just a handsome face, although his looks were undeniably a massive part of his appeal. Then came a brilliant move that redefined his career and his public image, a pivot to romantic comedies, most famously opposite Doris Day. Films like Pillow Talk, 1959, Lover Come Back, 1961, and Send Me No Flowers, 1964 were massive hits. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, portraying the perfect battle of the sexes, witty and charming. These films cemented his image as the ultimate eligible bachelor, the desirable, often slightly mischievous, romantic hero. By the early 1960s, Rock Hudson was one of the biggest box office stars in the world. He consistently ranked among the top earners and most popular actors. His image was carefully curated, the picture of heterosexuality, the ideal husband, the man every woman wanted to marry and every man wanted to be. He was tall, athletic, impeccably dressed, and possessed a winning smile. Studios promoted this image relentlessly, knowing it was gold at the box office. He was the epitome of the straight leading man, a cornerstone of Hollywood's romantic machinery. This era marked the peak of his public persona, a time when the carefully constructed facade seemed unbreakable, and the secret hidden beneath was guarded with extreme vigilance. Behind the dazzling success and the carefully maintained public image, Rock Hudson lived a life of intense secrecy. The handsome leading man, the romantic hero of countless films, the symbol of American masculinity, was gay. In the era of old Hollywood, and for many decades that followed, being openly gay was professional suicide for a major star, especially a male one whose appeal was built so heavily on his perceived heterosexual desirability. Studios, agents, and the stars themselves went to extraordinary lengths to hide any hint of homosexuality. Relationships with same-sex partners were kept strictly private. Clandestine affairs conducted away from the prying eyes of the press and the public. Any rumors were quickly and forcefully squashed. Rock Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, who was himself gay but lived a complicated and often self-loathing life, was particularly ruthless in protecting his clients' images. Wilson reportedly even brokered a deal with Confidential magazine in 1955, a notorious tabloid known for exposing celebrity scandals, threatening to reveal damaging information about other stars if they published a story about Rock Hudson's private life. The story was killed, but the incident highlights the constant, terrifying threat of exposure that loomed over him. The most striking example of the effort to maintain Rock Hudson's heterosexual image was his marriage to Phyllis Gates, Henry Wilson's secretary. In 1955, though presented as true love, the marriage served mainly to prove Hudson was straight. Hollywood insiders often said, "Marriage is a career move in Hollywood." The relationship lasted 3 years, long enough to cement Hudson's public image. By many accounts, and certainly according to Gates's later memoir, this was a marriage of convenience, orchestrated primarily to quell rumors and provide Rock with a public wife to complete the picture of the ideal leading man. Gates claimed she was unaware of his homosexuality before the marriage, but quickly realized the truth. The marriage lasted just 3 years, ending in divorce in 1958. It was a tragic arrangement for both parties, a stark illustration of the personal cost of maintaining the public deception. Phyllis Gates's memoir, My Husband, Rock Hudson, published after his death, painted herself as an innocent victim who didn't know about his sexuality until their marriage fell apart. However, other accounts from Hudson's close friends and biographer Robert Hoffler suggest Gates was aware and played a role in the carefully staged public image. Regardless of who knew what, the marriage lasted just 3 years before it crumbled. Gates even hired private detective Fred Otash to record conversations with Hudson. She confronted him in January 1958, saying, "Everyone knows that you were picking up boys off the street shortly after we were married and have continued to do so, thinking that being married would cover up for you." Hudson denied this. The divorce became final in 1958, with Gates citing mental cruelty and receiving a substantial settlement for the time. Gates later stated she had the power to destroy his career, but chose not to. For decades, Rock Hudson successfully navigated this double life. He had private relationships, maintained a close circle of trusted friends, and presented a flawless, seemingly uncomplicated heterosexual persona to the world. He attended premieres with beautiful actresses, gave interviews about his love life, and played the part of the charming, available male star. The pressure must have been immense, a constant burden of fear and concealment. He was living a lie, a necessary lie in the context of the time, to protect the career he had worked so hard to build and the life he had created. Maintaining his status as a beloved star, the image endured. But then, an unforeseen, devastating force began to emerge. A terrifying new illness, mysterious and deadly, started spreading, particularly within the gay community. It was the early 1980s, and the world was just beginning to grapple with acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS. In those initial years, before much was known about transmission or treatment, AIDS was shrouded in fear, ignorance, and intense prejudice. It was often dismissed by the mainstream, cruelly labeled things like gay cancer or gay plague, fueling stigma and terrifying misconceptions. This is where Rock Hudson's life took a tragic, pivotal turn. In 1984, Rock Hudson received a diagnosis that would shatter his world and inadvertently expose the secret he had kept hidden for over 30 years. He was diagnosed with AIDS. At this point, knowledge about AIDS was limited, and treatments were virtually non-existent. A diagnosis was, for all intents and purposes, a death sentence, and often a swift and agonizing one. For Rock Hudson, a man whose fame relied entirely on projecting an image of health and vitality, and whose private life was his most closely guarded secret, the diagnosis was catastrophic on multiple levels. He initially tried to keep the diagnosis absolutely private, revealing it only to a very small, trusted inner circle. He continued working, notably appearing in a recurring role on the popular television series Dynasty in 1984 and 1985. Watching those episodes now is poignant and heartbreaking, seeing the subtle physical changes in him, knowing the battle he was fighting in secret. He was visibly losing weight. His voice seemed weaker, but he was still trying desperately to maintain the facade, to continue his work, perhaps hoping for a miracle, a cure, or simply more time before the inevitable public scrutiny. But AIDS in 1985 was a brutal, aggressive disease with no effective treatment. His health began to decline rapidly. The effort of working, of maintaining the public image, became increasingly difficult. The disease was physically taxing, weakening his body and making it impossible to hide for much longer. The moment of the shocking exposure came in July 1985. Rock Hudson had traveled to Paris, France, for a benefit event. While there, his health took a severe turn for the worse. He collapsed at the Hotel Ritz Paris and had to be hospitalized. His hospitalization in Paris was a major news event. Here was a global superstar, suddenly and gravely ill far from home. Speculation about his condition mounted rapidly. His publicist in Paris, Yanu Collard, was faced with intense pressure from the media demanding to know what was wrong. And in that desperate moment, the truth had to be revealed. On July 25, 1985, Yanu Collard issued a press statement from Rock Hudson's bedside, confirming the devastating diagnosis. The statement read, "Rock Hudson is suffering from AIDS." This announcement was more than just a medical update. In the context of 1985, given the widespread public perception of AIDS as a gay disease, confirming that Rock Hudson had AIDS was, for all practical purposes, the public confirmation of his homosexuality. The two were inextricably linked in the prejudiced understanding of the time. This was not how Rock Hudson ever wanted his secret revealed. It wasn't a choice he made on his own terms. It was forced out by a deadly illness, exposed in a moment of physical crisis. The reaction was instantaneous and seismic. The world was stunned. Rock Hudson? The epitome of the straight leading man? The romantic opposite of Doris Day? Having AIDS? It was almost unbelievable to the public. The media went into a frenzy. Headlines screamed the news across the globe. The carefully constructed image of over 30 years shattered in an instant. This exposure wasn't just about his sexuality. It was about AIDS. And because of the intense fear and ignorance surrounding the disease, the revelation was met with a complex mix of shock, pity, curiosity, and horrifyingly, intense stigma and prejudice. Some people recoiled in fear. Actresses who had kissed him on screen were tested for HIV. The public reaction, while generating massive awareness of the disease, was also a testament to the deep-seated homophobia and fear of AIDS that permeated society. Rock Hudson was now not just battling a deadly disease, he was battling it under an unprecedented spotlight. With his deepest secret laid bare, facing the very public judgment and potential rejection he had feared his entire career. And the battle he was fighting was profoundly painful. AIDS in 1985 was relentless. Without the antiretroviral therapies available today, the virus ravaged the body. The physical decline was brutal. Patients suffered from severe weight loss, often developing a condition known as wasting syndrome. They became susceptible to a host of opportunistic infections that healthy immune systems could fight off, but which were devastating to an AIDS patient. These included severe pneumonia, debilitating fungal infections, and neurological issues that could cause confusion, dementia, and intense pain. Rock Hudson's final months were a physical and emotional torment. He was airlifted from Paris back to Los Angeles, a flight that itself was a dramatic event covered by the media. He spent time in the hospital before eventually returning to his home in Beverly Hills, where he was cared for. Accounts from those who saw him during this time describe the heartbreaking transformation. The tall, robust figure wasted away. The pain was constant, likely from various infections and the overall systemic failure caused by the virus. He required round-the-clock care. The once vibrant star was reduced to a fragile, suffering man. But the pain wasn't just physical. It was also the agony of facing death while simultaneously dealing with the public explosions surrounding his life. His privacy was gone. His secret was out. He became the most famous face of a disease that was deeply feared and misunderstood, a public figure who was, in many ways, being forced to confront decades of societal prejudice against both gay people and AIDS patients in his final, weakest moments. He was isolated, not necessarily intentionally by friends, but by the sheer difficulty of his condition and the fear of the unknown surrounding AIDS at the time. Visitors had to be careful. He was likely weak, tired, and in constant discomfort. His struggle was a slow, agonizing decline. The specific details are harrowing. The loss of strength, the difficulty breathing, the various symptoms that attacked his weakened system. It was a far cry from the glamorous, effortless masculinity he had portrayed on screen. He was wrestling with the brutal reality of a disease that offered no respite, no hope of recovery, only increasing suffering until the end. Rock Hudson died painfully. His death was not a sudden, clean event like a heart attack or accident. It was a drawn-out process of the body shutting down, overwhelmed by infections and the virus itself, accompanied by significant physical discomfort and deterioration. He battled, he suffered, and he ultimately succumbed. Rock Hudson passed away at his home in Beverly Hills on October 2, 1985, just over 2 months after his diagnosis was publicly announced. His death marked the end of a painful struggle, a struggle intensified by the glare of public scrutiny and the weight of a lifetime secret revealed in the most traumatic way. The immediate aftermath of Rock Hudson's death was unlike that of most Hollywood stars. The grief was real for his fans and friends, but it was intertwined with the ongoing public conversation, and often controversy, about AIDS and homosexuality. His passing further cemented his place in history, not just as a movie star, but as a pivotal figure in the AIDS crisis. His status as the first major celebrity to announce he had the disease, and then to die from it so publicly, forced the world to pay attention. AIDS was no longer a disease affecting only marginalized communities. It had struck down a beloved icon. His death spurred a massive increase in public awareness about AIDS. Donations to AIDS research and support organizations surged. His friend, Elizabeth Taylor, became a tireless advocate for AIDS research and co-founded the American Foundation for AIDS Research, AMFAR, shortly after his public diagnosis, largely galvanized by his plight. Rock Hudson himself, in his will, left a significant portion of his estate to support AIDS research. While the initial reaction to his diagnosis and death included elements of fear and prejudice, it also began a slow, difficult shift in public perception. He humanized the disease for many who previously saw it as a distant problem. His courage, or perhaps just the circumstances of his unwanted public battle, forced open a global conversation. Rock Hudson was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea. There was no public funeral, partly to maintain some semblance of privacy even in death, and perhaps due to the complexities and sensitivities surrounding AIDS at the time. His death undeniably changed the trajectory of the AIDS epidemic's public profile, making it impossible to ignore. It also marked a significant, albeit tragic, moment in the history of LGBTQ+ visibility, forcing a discussion about homosexuality in Hollywood and beyond, though still amidst considerable stigma. Rock Hudson lived a life that was, in many ways, a masterclass in contradiction. He was the ultimate public figure, yet intensely private. He embodied a powerful, aspirational image while living a life of necessary concealment. His career reached stratospheric heights, built on a foundation of meticulous construction and a carefully guarded secret. The tragedy of his final months is the cruel intersection of that carefully hidden life and a devastating, then untreatable illness. The shocking exposure of his gay secret was inextricably linked to his AIDS diagnosis, forcing him to face the world's prejudice and fear at his most vulnerable moment. His death was not just the end of a life, but the agonizing conclusion to a lifelong performance, made physically painful by the ravages of the disease. Rock Hudson's legacy is therefore layered. He remains a cinematic legend, the charming lead in beloved films, but he is also, and perhaps more significantly, a symbol of the personal cost of living a hidden life in Hollywood, a tragic icon of the AIDS epidemic's early, terrifying years, whose death undeniably helped force a crucial global reckoning. His story serves as a poignant reminder of the complex realities behind the silver screen, the burdens carried by stars, and the unexpected ways a private struggle can become a catalyst for monumental public change. His life and death remain a gripping, heartbreaking chapter in the dramatic and often secret history of old Hollywood.